This episode of Love Larn is sponsored by Mopar Saws.
It's been a long time coming, but it's time to see if we can get this engine started. Obviously, new engine, so there's no oil in there. So we need to get some oil popped up in there, as well as petrol, obviously. And then beyond that, once the engine's running, there's a lot of other stuff to be checking on the machine, including the adjustment of this clutch fork to make sure our reel's going to engage. I want to be checking our chain tension and just the whole drive system over on this side to make sure that it's all adjusted correctly. And there's the drive clutch, the rear roller as well, to make sure that's going to engage correctly and propel us forward. And finally there's the cutter itself. We want to make sure that's going around, obviously, but we also want to make sure it's going around in a sensible manner and not flapping all over the place, make sure there's nothing that we've missed. Apart from that, I'm just going to be really checking to make sure that all of our nuts and bolts are done up tight, so that we don't lose anything into the reel or along the way, because there's a lot of vibration coming off these engines, especially the older machines, and we want to make sure that we're not leaving any trail of debris behind us as we're mowing along, because that's inevitably going to end up inside that reel and muck up either our bottom blade or our grind on our reels. Once I've got this topped up, we'll go through the start process for the engine itself. This is one of the newer 3.5 horsepower Briggs engines, so we'll go through the start sequence for that and the shutdown sequence as well. We've got the clutch disengaged, so the engine starts. We're not going to be working anything in terms of the drive system unless the adjustment's completely off, so we'll keep that disengaged for now and move on to getting some oil into this mower. What we're going to be doing is just filling up, and according to the instruction manual for the engine, we'll fill it up to the appropriate level, which approximately 600 mils, or until we're getting a full reading on dipstick, I suppose. It's worth noting as well that I've got the machine sitting on a level surface here, just to make sure that we're getting a proper reading off the dipstick on this machine. Now the operator's instruction manual for this engine says to basically remove the dipstick, wipe it clean, and then take your reading in terms of level against the dipstick. So you don't want to be taking that oil reading with the dipstick fully screwed in. There's another one around the back here, and I guess they're for different purposes, so on different installations it might make more sense to be using the one at the back. So I've got my 1 litre of SAE 30 engine oil that's come with the engine when I purchased it. Maybe worth noting that you can buy different grades of oil for mainly different operating temperatures, as I understand it. So if you're working in extreme heat or extreme cold, you might want to substitute a different grade of oil, but for my purposes that will do fine. I've also got my 80ml oil syringe here. Picked this up for about 10 or 12 bucks from Super Cheap Auto or wherever it is. Because it's a bit awkward getting in there unless you've got a funnel or a system, so I thought this might work a little bit better for me.
Hey guys, this is definitely a case of do as I say, not as I've done. I thought I'd give the syringe a try. Didn't really work that well. Get yourselves a funnel instead. Pour your oil in there and done.
And we'll just pump that in there. Try not to make a complete mess. And it's worth mentioning as well that the manufacturer's instructions for this motor suggest changing the oil after the first 5 hours of operation as well. And so when it does come time to change out this oil, there's a little drain plug down here. I think there might be one at the back as well, for the purpose of taking all that oil out of the bottom of the machine. You can see our oil levels just starting to fill up there. If I pop that in there like that, you can see that we're nearly to the fill point, but not quite. And that's just about our last 40 mils there, including the straw. just going easy because I don't want it to come spurting out. Let's check that. That's looking pretty good. I think we can probably drop a little bit more in there. You can just see the oil level sitting there, so it's not bad off. It's not far off at all. Just want to make sure that we're not leaking any oil. And we're not. So I don't want to overfill, but I also don't want to be running this engine without enough oil. I think we'll stop it there. It's nearly to the top of our line, so we'll keep an eye on that oil level over the next 5 hours. Make sure that's done up nice and tightly. As well as the one at the back. So next order of business, we'll get some petrol on the top, fill up the petrol tank. I'm not going to overdo it, and give it enough to get going anyway, make sure that we're going to be okay. Worst case, we might need to remove this engine, so I just don't want too much petrol sloshing around in there. I didn't put oil in this engine until I was pretty certain that I'd done as much as I could in terms of the rest of the reassembly, because I didn't want to be tilting the engine around while there was oil in the mower. While I was setting up the cut and all that sort of thing. Let's get some fuel on the top next. So in terms of refueling, I've just got regular unleaded petrol here, nothing higher end. From what I understand, the higher octane fuels run hotter, so that's not what we want to achieve with this engine. So I'm just running the regular petrol. I'll give it a good drink, but I don't want to go overboard on it. With oil in the engine, petrol in the engine, clutch disengaged, we're ready to start through the start sequence for this engine. So let's get a close-up of the stop controls. These newer engines are not quite as straightforward as the older style that just had maybe a priming bulb at most, and otherwise, a choke and a run speed, and of course the pull start. So first things first, we'll turn on the kill switch. Next we want to change the engine speed to full throttle and put the engine on choke by sliding the grey lever this way, and we'll turn on our fuel. At that point we can remove the little warning sticker saying put oil in, because we've done that, and we've got our pull start. So we're just about ready to give it a whirl. So before I pull the start cord on this thing, I'm sitting on a little rubberized mat here rather than the pavers, because the vibrations from these engines running on concrete or whatever does have the potential to crack a rail, on a twin rail or even a solid deck. So normally I'd be starting this on the grass, but because I don't want any loose nuts and bolts and stuff rattling free and ending up in the grass, I'm running over here by the shed with the mat. In addition, there's a lot of stuff that's going to be going round and round here very quickly. In particular, the little retaining bolts on the clutch half, or the cotter pin if your machine's got the cotter pin, chains, sprockets, potentially cutters, all sorts. The first run on this thing, the engine's never been run, so I'm going to be a little bit extra careful today. I've got my safety goggles, I've got my mask because I've got it, and I've just got some earplugs as well. Just remembering the clutch is disengaged. That doesn't mean it's going to make any difference, but I can tell for now that there's not too much friction happening there with it disengaged, so that's how we want it. Hopefully everything else is as it should be. So with our pull start, I'm going to pull it back until I can feel it tighten, and give it another go. So it was a good first start. To turn off, I just hit the kill switch on there. Obviously, our cutter was spinning, which is not what we want, so we're going to have to work on the adjustment of this cutter clutch. But essentially the issue that we've got here is that the clutch cone is not getting pushed far enough into the body of the clutch half right now to fully disengage. So normally everything would be running around, the clutch cone would be rotating driving the rest of the machine when this clutch is disengaged and fully pushed into the conical shape of the clutch half here. When it's disengaged, it should be sitting back far enough so that it's not engaging the cores. Obviously it is in this case. Unfortunately on this machine the adjustment bolt that I've got in my clutch fork at the moment is it's wound all the way in, so I don't have any more way to wind it. The other option I have is to move the entire clutch body that way a little bit, but it's already a good sort of 5 or so mil, 10 mil off the end of the shaft here anyway, so I don't want it too much further out. But our engine started, so that's a good sign. Let's see if I can adjust that, and I'll give it another whirl.
I'll note here we're trying to strike a balance between the ability to fully disengage the clutch and avoiding having the clutch fork bearing against the thrust pad or fiber washer when the clutch is engaged. For obvious reasons, we want to be able to disengage the clutch, but we don't want to wear the static thrust pad by virtue of it rubbing against the spinning clutch cone when the clutch is engaged. In the case of a nylon thrust pad, you'll melt it if the fork isn't correctly adjusted, and a brass thrust pad will also wear quickly in this scenario. Here I'm winding the adjusting screw inward so the fork is closer to the thrust pad, pressing the cone further into the clutch body.
So I've wound that little adjuster screw in as far as it would go, just to give me a little bit of extra travel on that clutch. We'll see if that makes the difference that we need, and go from there. Let's give it another go. I've got the choke on just to help us along, assuming the engine's still cold, so we'll see how we go, see if it starts.
Yikes, I did the wrong thing here. I should have firstly slowed the engine speed before engaging the cutter clutch. The engine is running at full revs, and if you pay attention you can hear a clunk as the clutch is engaged. This is not a nice way to treat the clutch, as in the clutch body, keys, engine shaft, PTO shaft, and cone. I should have firstly reduced the engine speed, then engaged the clutch, and then increased the engine speed again. Same goes for when I disengage the clutch.
That was a bit better. The engine was happy to run without the cutter engaging, so that's what we want. When I engaged, everything looked pretty good there. Could maybe have a little bit of extra tension on that top chain. The bottom clutch is working well. Happy with that. The cutter was going around, so that's what we want. We'll adjust the final set on that cutter once we get on the grass. But for now, I think I'm going to need a longer bolt for this clutch fork, because that really just needs an extra little bit there. So what I'm going to do is just double check our retaining bolts on this clutch shaft, since that's been spinning around a few times. Make sure they're still nice and snug. Everything else I think is good. Just need to fiddle with that top clutch a little bit, unfortunately. And we're pretty much good, I think.